You're listening to the 10-Minute Bible Hour podcast, where we do fast, fun, free daily deep dives into books of the Bible. And right now, we're going through Esther.
I would like to start today by telling you about my morning routine. No, not my MORNING morning routine. I mean my MOURNING morning routine when I'm sad about something. Whether it's something that was my own dang fault or no fault of my own that I'm just sad about, I find that there are two things that normally happen. One, I tend to find somewhere to sit where I can just stare off into the distance and let my eyes water a little bit and just let time kind of fade away while I'm just sad and let the sadness or regret wash over me. Two, speaking of washing over me, I will then at some point take a shower, and I'll have one good morning shower, MOURNING, where I will just put that hot water right on the back of my head and I will let it run over my nose and I will just stare down the drain and think about the sadness going down the drain. And then sometime after that, I always end up feeling better. Back in the day, they used sackcloth and ashes. That's what they would do when they were sad about things, whether something happened to them or something that was their own dang fault. They'd wear real scratchy, uncomfortable clothes, and they'd put, filthy, dirty, black coal char on their face to make it really clear to everybody, I'm sad, and I'm sad for a really good reason. And this was a practice that goes way beyond the boundaries of the Bible, but we certainly see it happen a lot in the Bible as well. Sackcloth and ashes is just a metaphor for deep, deep mourning. By the time we get to the New Testament, we see that process of mourning had become a little bit performative, a little bit bastardized. You're starting to see people who are literally getting paid to just wail and shriek and be sad about things. There's even some funny little playful moments with the professional mourner scene when Jesus of Nazareth reverses death when the mourners are already there. Like, it's not in the text, but you can almost imagine them being like, do we still get paid? Because we still mourned, and the person was dead for a little while. We need to add a writer to our contract in the future when we do this. But when it comes up in the Old Testament, it's usually presented as a very authentic expression of an outward physical manifestation of deep inner turmoil. And now that the big edict of Esther chapter 3 has gone through, a farce of a legislative process has occurred, and without anybody really thinking about it or debating it, and without there being anybody to argue the other side, maybe we shouldn't commit genocide for no reason whatsoever, just because that one guy said to. Nope, none of that happened. The edict has been issued. It's the real deal. The king has put his name and his reputation, and indeed the reputation of the throne, the credibility of the empire is on the line, and it seems like he doesn't even know it or get what he just did, because at the end of Esther chapter 3, he's great. He's sitting down, getting a drink with his genocide buddy, but all of the capital is bewildered because the edict makes no sense. It doesn't fit with the whole cut of the jib of Persia. It doesn't fit with the spoken values. It doesn't strategically make any sense. If you'll do this to one people group and make us participate and just let everybody plunder them, why wouldn't you do it to everybody else? So by the end of chapter 3, we've got the emotional reaction of the king and Haman. Whatever, let him eat cake, let's have a drink. We've got the reaction of the non-Jewish citizenry of Persia who are bewildered by this, but there's one glaring reaction we're still missing, and that's the one from the people who are going to be on the receiving end of this horrible thing, Mordecai and the Jews. How are they going to mourn? Are they just going to stare off into the distance and be misty-eyed like me, or are they going to do the sackcloth and ashes thing? I'm just going to spoil it for you. It's the sackcloth and ashes. Esther chapter 4, verse 1. When Mordecai learned of all that had been done, he tore his clothes, put on sackcloth and ashes, and went out into the city, wailing loudly and bitterly. But he went only as far as the king's gate, because no one clothed in sackcloth was allowed to enter it. In every province to which the edict and order of the king came, there was great mourning among the Jews, with fasting, weeping, and wailing. Many lay in sackcloth and ashes. This is another one of those passages where the Bible is stunningly understated. But also, I get it. I don't understand really what the advantage here would be of lingering for another paragraph or two to be like, they were really sad. If you think about what we just said in the couple of sentences there at the beginning of chapter 4 about how sad they were, now here's 2 more paragraphs to just reiterate that very, very heavily. They're super. No, just as a reader, you're supposed to be able to do the math on it, but it'd be weird if we skipped this emotional beat and didn't see the reaction of the people who are going to be on the receiving end of this thing. And predictably, they're broken up about it. We get a little hint here, though, that is one of the places that comes the closest to acknowledging God in the text. I mean, God, again, does not get mentioned formally in the book of Esther, but, I mean, it says that many of the Jews, they were mourning with fasting, weeping, and wailing. Well, I suppose anybody could weep and wail, but the fasting, what's that about? I mean, maybe it's to lose weight or just clear their minds so they will be better ready when this day arrives, but probably that fasting was an act of dedication or partnered with prayer as an appeal to the Lord. We know that this fasting and prayer routine is something that other exiles had done during the earlier Babylonian captivity. It would make sense that, hearkening back to those moments of dire persecution that Daniel and Shadrach and Meshach and Abednego went through, as recorded in the book of Daniel, under the reign of the Babylonians, it makes sense. I mean, there's kind of a template here when there's a horrible, oppressive, persecutory threat going on. So it's at least an acknowledgement that the Jewish people in the book of Esther are thinking of God or appealing to God, that I think we can see there. But I'm really intrigued by Mordecai's mourning. It reminds me of a scene in HBO's Rome, which is a show I don't recommend you watch, as is the case with all shows, but it's one that I went and watched for you so that I could tell you it was bad many years ago. And in that show, there's a rivalry between a couple of women, one of them from Julius Caesar's family, one of them from another family, and one of them finally does her weaselly, dirty nonsense, and she gets a leg up on the other lady and commits a grievous injustice against her. And I will never forget the scene of, I don't remember the characters, the lady from the Julii family standing in sackcloth and ashes, hair all tattered. She's a very refined woman. She's nobility, but in this scene, she's totally broken. And she stands outside the house of Attia of the Junii, demanding justice just again and again, like making it clear to everybody in high society Rome that there's a grievance here and I'm not leaving until it was addressed. And I gotta think there's an element to that with what's going on with Mordecai here. I mean, obviously he's very, very sad. I suppose tomorrow we can maybe talk about all of the elements that would compose that mourning for him. But I think there's also something very strategic here. He's making it clear that a horrible injustice is taking place, that he has a horrible grievance to be adjudicated. He wants people to know this is part of his plan for trying to respond to what's happened and make things better. He's not allowed to go inside the king's gate. What is that about? Maybe because sackcloth and ash was a bit of a form of protest for justice or a plea for justice. And inside the king's gate is where rational discourse and debate about justice occurs. Maybe politically, judicially, they just didn't want that kind of performative grieving and demand for justice in the halls of sober, blind justice. I don't know. I'm just speculating there. I have no idea, but it wasn't allowed. So instead, Mordecai is back to doing what he's been doing in the past. He hangs out in the streets. He is down with the hubbub and the buzz, and he knows what's going on. Good things have happened in the past when Mordecai lingered around the gates. The reader who is attentive to the rhythms and rhymes of this story hopefully hears like, man, he's really sad. But the last time he was at the gate, there was a thwarting of a plan to kill. Maybe somehow this is the beginnings of the thwarting of another plan to kill. I don't want to dismiss this little nod to the grieving, the very public grieving of Mordecai and the Jews as being somehow performative or entirely designed to win sympathy. I think there's just a genuine heartbrokenness over the way that this has gone down, and we can talk about that more tomorrow. Little bit of housekeeping here on the way out the door. Several of you have been kind enough to support this program, many of you through Planning Center, but even more of you through patreon.com/the TMBH podcast. And over there on Patreon, we had a problem here over the last couple of weeks. Well, we didn't really have a problem. Patreon had a bad couple of weeks. And I've heard from several of you that you were trying to support the program, but your card wasn't being recognized and they weren't charging your cards properly. I looked into it, and then a big mass email from Patreon went out to everybody, all the content creators who work with them, and it said, yeah, sure enough, you probably heard about this. We are having problems, and we think we've got it straightened out, and it's good to go. But it would be wise to let everybody know who supports that it might be good to go and just double check and make sure things are right. I did notice a shocking hit over there as a result of their issues. So, hey, if you're supporting the program through Patreon and you have a minute to go and double check and just make sure that things are right on that account, that would be awesome. If not, I always feel weird bringing it up. So whatever's cool. Thank you so much to everybody who is supporting in any way, has supported in any way, might someday in any way, or might not in any way. I'm just so dang grateful that we get to do this. And thank you in advance for considering double checking on that if you are part of the Patreon thing. Okay, that is it. Tomorrow we're going to talk about the specific 5 or 7 reasons I've thought of for why Mordecai is particularly heartbroken about this thing that go beyond the obvious. I'm Matt. This is the 10-Minute Bible Hour podcast. Let's do this again soon.